Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about cannons and ship of fools. We're going to write them on a tier list here. Two things before I start. I am mostly a solo player. I'm always going to be using the Sentry turret. That's a given because I can't be armed with two cannons at once. That makes no sense. Unless you have a certain item, but we will get to that in the video. Anyways, the second thing being that I'm going to be trying to make this tier list more towards the late game. That is where I am. That is where I think most of the players are going to be. If you are in the early game, don't worry, or the mid game. I will be talking about where the cannons would be. They don't move that much between the mid or the early mid and the late game, but I'm just saying that there might be like a few minor changes that you might want to move around just in case, maybe, depending on where you are in the game. And without further ado, let's start. Ooh, and one thing I forgot to mention is that, of course, cannons gain an extra power at Lighthouse 13. And so certain that one might be probably like the most important thing to recognize when going from the early and mid to late game is the fact that they get gain that power spike to them, and so that might affect the tier list. All right, first of all is the assault cannon. Assault cannon goes in the good category. I did modify these because I'd say that there's a very large rift between good and garbage because there are socially acceptable cannons and awful cannons. There's no like, oh, this one might be good in certain scenarios, you know. No, this is a you use these ones, or you don't use these ones, and that is that. That being said, the assault cannon is probably the tried and true. It's one of my favorite cannons. It was the cannon I used to carry myself all the way from the beginning of the game to like Lighthouse 12, maybe. All solo, by the way. But yeah, this has been my friend for a while. And there is a reason. It is basic, and that that's all it needs. Um, it does basic good damage, a 130 base fire rate. Um, it's got a good amount of capacity, right? And it shoots bullets with good aim. And the reason why this is important to me is because when you're looking for a cannon, I want one that's simple, that works well, and it fires, it does what it needs to, and it doesn't try to be something special. Um, it I mean, it speaks for itself by the fact that it got me to Lighthouse 13 when I was playing solo. But yeah, it's just a solid gun. Um, I would not be unhappy with this gun, and it gets a very good special effect from Lighthouse 13, being the homing effect. That means basically you don't have to aim as much, and that's also awesome. So good gun, good damage. I mean, actually, good consistency, good aim, everything good, you know. All right, so next up is the grape shot. This goes in good tier. Might as well make this best tier because for simplicity's sake. But so the grape shot, very good weapons. I would say that the charge weapons are not my favorite just because of how slow they are. You know, you have to charge it up for it to actually do some good damage, and if you don't, then you have to like you have to manually click a bunch of times. You'll miss some of those shots because of the fact that it's not, you can't hold it down. So your fire rate on like single fired bullets are not going to be the most optimal. But that doesn't really matter because the reason why you're going to be using the grape shot is because of its massive like spread AoE damage ability, which is pretty solid. I will say, um, it tends to like one shot a decent amount of enemies, and if you get items that will condense that sort of spread range or enable it to be stronger, you got a solid weapon on your hands. The one thing I will say about this weapon is that when I was playtesting it, the I had a hard time with ammo that fired at a really slow fire rate because I think the point of the grape shot, right, is you charge it up and then you fire it off all at once. But the thing is that it's slow, and so that's like the drawback. But when you have a weapon that has a very low fire rate, or sorry, ammunition that gives you a very low fire rate, you're hurting that charge up time, and so you never hit that max. You don't get that max charge very fast, as fast as if you're using like a shell compared to like the anchor. And so I realized that like some of the ammunitions become pretty unusable because of the fact that it just charges so slowly. But other than that, I mean, you only need one ammo for it. It does good damage. Bounce is an insanely good ability for wave clear. At the beginning of my run, I completely wiped out waves of enemies, and it's good for burst as well, which is pretty good because of things like the claws and like the bosses where the enemies have damage quotas or they will like get hit once and go down. And so like being able to throw all your damage out at once onto a single enemy before it just like or onto that single tentacle per se before it just leaves is a not bad ability that you have, and you don't need crowd control for it, so solid weapon. um, I will say that yeah, it's not my favorite just because of the charge time, but if you can definitely make this weapon work very well. All right, next up, I will take on the cousin, I guess, of the power, the grape shot, and that's the power shot. And the power shot got definitely got the shorter end of the stick here. Um, no spread on its charge ability, so it's close to the grape shot, right? You got the charge up and then it fires out, but it fires out one bullet. And here's the problem with that is the fact that you you're not going to be outputting enough damage to clear out waves of enemies in like the mid to late game when you get those darkness enemies and you get those hordes, and you're not going to be able to react it very fast, and kill everything. Um, Also, the ability it gets at Lighthouse 14 compared to the grape shots, which is bounce, it gets pierce, which is just the worst ability because um, bounce, it gives it auto aim. Pierce is just bounce, but it goes through them, so like it's still on a linear trajectory. There's just no point in having Pierce over Bounce. Um, and so sure you can it sort of solves the AoE problem it has, but Bounce is just better. Um, sure this one's not as accurate, but you're still hitting enough shots, and if you got the bounce, you got a decent amount of damage. This one, you're gonna be hitting one enemy, reload, hit one enemy, reload. That's just not gonna work for the later stages, the later map tiles of the area. So like, I mean, the first area will spawn like two, three enemies. You'll be fine there. But once it hits like the later ones, you're getting like waves, and you'll just get overwhelmed. There's no point using that weapon. All right, next up, the dual barrel. This is my favorite weapon. Um, it's versatile. It really only is good for like late game though, because in the early to mid game, I've always been like struggling for supplies. I think this is fixed by the fact that you get the new Sirens call ship or whatever it's called that allows you to re-roll resources and sort of pick and choose which items you want. But other than that, I would always opt for the regular assault cannon because of the inconsistencies. I think the assault cannon covered for that. The dual barrel has like a little more than half the fire rate of the assault cannon. So you're technically, if you load both barrels, you're pushing out more bullets than the assault cannon would. And the ability at Lighthouse 14, you get rage when you reload it. Not bad, because you probably be reloading it a bunch of times, because it's got tool chambers, and the two chambers allow you to have two ammo, which allows you to have more combos. And that's really the point of this gun, is to stick in combos. And it works really well at that. It kind of covers a lot of the bases of like struggling to find some trinkets. So I mean you can use it as a replacement for like, oh, I don't have Siren's Call, but I have this ship with 6 slots, so I can stuff a bunch of ammos on here and make a bunch of combos to fix the fact that I don't have the trinkets. I still think the trinkets are better, and so there's that. But the double barrel works better with more resources, obviously, because it takes up 2 slots to have 2 ammos, obviously. So, I mean, you're probably not going to be investing much into artifacts. And so, if you can't invest much into artifacts, then you want to make sure that your artifacts are good. Um, but I mean, it can work everywhere. The Siren's Call is a little slow to start. I realized that the Siren's Call is amazing with the Grape Shot in the beginning though, because of the Siren skill, and that bounce. But yeah, I mean, once it gets going, it really does get going, and I really love this weapon. It was what I used to get my Lighthouse 15 solo run done. Yeah, solid weapon. Okay, the last one is the Sentry Cannon and it lands itself in a good spot. Um, I don't know why I was laughing at that. I'm very, I'm kind of on the line between good and best. The Sentry is a very good weapon or cannon. Sorry, it's obviously I have to use it because I play solo. But aside from that, I mean, it's a 65 fire rate weapon, which is half of the assault cannon, and what's it the lighthouse ability at level 14 gives it double capacity and increased fire rate when the player is firing it, so that sort of negates the very slow fire rate, bringing it closer to that assault cannon range, which is pretty good. Actually, no, very good. But I love this weapon, and not only because I'm playing solo, but because it's just consistent. It's strong. It just fires on its own. You can just load it and just watch it fly. And it's got decent aim. It doesn't have perfect aim. I will say that. That's one thing about it, is the fact that enemies move fast sometimes. It'll miss some shots. But and also the fact that it will shoot super slowly, so you can't load anything very heavy into there or ammo heavy into there. So like stuff like your sea urchin or your crucibles are probably not the best choice of sticking in there. But overall, it's a very like one of my favorite weapons, and I still use it in my duo runs because I like to condense all of my trinkets for the cannons on one player, and then all my paddle trinkets on another player, giving you specialization type deal. And then the player running around with paddle has an autonomous cannon to fire off. So, I mean, very good cannon. Nothing more to say about it. Just consistent. Oh, sorry, one more thing to say about it. You do unlock it last, so I mean, obviously you're not gonna have it during the early game. All right, so that is my tier list finished. If you are wondering for the late game, I would just run the me personally solo runs. I would run this and this. Then for early mid, I would run uh, assault and the Sentry. If I'm playing duo, I would literally run the same exact thing. Both the assault and the dual barrel can be swapped out for the grape shot. Obviously, like I said, not my favorite, but it works pretty well in certain builds. I personally don't like it just because of how many like things you can add to your weapon that sort of cover the base, quote unquote, of the um, grape shot's ability of spread damage and like huge AoE slash bounce. Um, but overall, it's a solid. Like all four of these are solid weapons. This one I don't like, but these are all good. So if you pick pick or choose all of these, you'll be fine. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section, and hope you all have a nice day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.